This is the worst PvE ordeal. You can't change my mind. Okay, trying to complete the your mine is mine ordeal. Teammates keep shooting the mines despite me asking them not to. Okay. Tried to do it with bots, but they do the same thing. Okay. A group of mines finally spawns, but there's no other enemies around. Alright, so your mine is an ordeal where you basically need to melee hit spore mines into enemies. I'm not too sure if it actually keeps track of enemies you take out or if it's damage based. Regardless, this is definitely an ordeal I basically stayed away from. However, I saw this post, and there's actually a fair amount of comments here that are helping out this poster with this ordeal. So I figured, hey, you know what? We covered ordeals in the past. It's probably time to cover this one and actually see if there's any good advice in completing it, because clearly there's somebody, or at least there's at least one person here who's going mad at doing it, but I can assume there's a lot of people who are going mad at trying this ordeal. And we have covered it before, but we covered it in a bug sense where it wasn't working. So I assume the ordeal is working now, and this is going to be a video based around the best tactics on completing this ordeal. Get a sniper, equipped with knife, be sure the knife has the shoulder charge perk, start termination solo, and run ahead, not engaging with any groups until you see some mines. Cloak, then shoulder charge into the mines. Restart mission, and repeat. That's how I did it. Alright, well, yeah, dude, honestly, the shoulder charge perk for the knife is definitely a pretty good perk overall. Seeing that it's definitely useful to take out these mines is, you know, kind of reassuring that you should really try out the shoulder charge perk. I'm not sure, though, if the combat knife lets you pick the shoulder charge perk and shadow stab. I don't think they do. Honestly, though, the shoulder charge is pretty interesting. I've never tried it in combat before, but I definitely want to because I do like the combat knife, and I kind of want to try it out on tactical. I can imagine on tactical is pretty strong. Start termination solo and run ahead. Yeah. So termination seems to be the operation of choice for the spore mines. I actually think that makes sense. I can imagine, you know, exfiltration, the new operation, could be a good choice for it as well, but, you know, there's probably a lot of obstacles to get through to find some spore mines, whereas in termination, you pretty much just go forward. Ultimately, though, yeah, just jump into these operations and try to rinse and repeat these strategies. Cloaking is obviously going to be a very useful tool because cloaking is going to allow you to sneak up on the spore mines. I honestly, now I'm thinking about it, I really don't know what the devs were thinking with this challenge. Like, is there another class that can actually take advantage of this ordeal as much as, like, the sniper can? Like, the sniper can literally just cloak up and melee into spore mines. I can't imagine, like, what is Vanguard going to do? If Vanguard uses their grapple, the spore mines might actually explode. You know what? That might actually be a way to do it. I'm kind of curious to see if Vanguard can pull off this ordeal as well as the sniper. But yes, this seems to be the meta strategy here, is to get a sniper, get shoulder charge on your knife, go into termination, cloak, shoulder charge into the mines, restart the mission, because the ordeal does count whenever you do it, and repeat. So yeah, this seems pretty good. This shoulder charge perk on the knife is definitely a move I want to try out, but ultimately it does seem to be very useful for this ordeal. I finally got it done last week, and I basically just spent 2 hours running the first part of Inferno repeatedly as sniper and kept cloaking and shoulder bashing mines into the miners groups before the AI teammates attacked. Okay, so it seems like you don't really need just termination. You can also go into Inferno, which is not a surprise. Inferno, especially in high difficulties, can start pretty sweaty. Inferno and termination are actually two operations when it comes to, like, absolute that just starts off very, very aggressive. But yeah, this is I finally got it done last week, and I basically just spent 2 hours. Yeah, see, that's the one thing about this ordeal that is kind of crazy is, yeah, 2 hours just farming mines does not sound fun to me. Honestly, even when it comes to, like, other games, you know, I'd rather just level up the thing by playing the game rather than leveling up the thing through farming, essentially. And I have an example of that for, like, Oblivion. there's ways you can, level up your destruction spell, where destruction spells are like fire spells or whatever. So you can bring up a test dummy and use fire spells on that test dummy, and you can effectively get your destruction skill. You can max it out. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I just wanted to point out how boring that is. So, like, honestly, this is why, like, sometimes doing this rinse and repeat gameplay stuff for, like, these ordeals can definitely feel a little bit boring, ultimately. But, to each their own. I can imagine there are definitely some people who can enjoy this sort of thing. Maybe it's relaxing. But yeah, still, I say all that. I say all that basically just to point out that if you don't want to, if you don't want to restart these operations and continuously farm these spore mines, you can always just play the game. You can always just play the game, and now that you know the strategy, you can just, implement that when it's necessary. However, I can imagine this ordeal is probably best suited for people who are just want to, who just want to get it over with. So maybe these farming strategies are definitely like the best way to approach it. But if it sounds boring to you, I can imagine that you can get this ordeal done if you just pay attention and play with Sniper, apparently. You can get this ordeal done pretty fast if you just play the game naturally. Completed it by pure accident in the final section of Inferno while surrounded by a huge wave of gaunts. Just started stomping and chainsword combo for AoE, and it turns out there were mines behind me that got kicked into surrounding crowd. I guess the best way to complete certain ordeals is to just play long enough and it will sort of happen. Okay, that's definitely a way to do that. Wait, the final section in Inferno. So this is basically, yeah, the final section of Inferno, obviously. But like, this is basically a really good spot to farm mines. At least during the spore mine apocalypse, I've seen so many spore mines at this part, dude. Seriously, and not to mention there's going to be a large wave of gaunts. So if any sort of spore mines spawn in, you pretty much have a really high chance at stomping the spore mines into some gaunts for some nice spore mine damage. But yeah, ultimately, I actually kind of am leaning towards Inferno to get this ordeal done. This is also a pretty good way to level up, I have to admit. If you're playing heavy or yeah, this guy was playing heavy, I guess. Is this what it said? While surrounded by huge weight, just started stomping. End of chain. Okay, so no, they're using a chainsword. But I guess, hey, you know what? Heavy has some stomps too. But yeah, I guess if you want, just play something that can stomp, jump into Inferno, get a little risky, maybe just, inch up to the spore mines, get what you can get, and just, continuously grind Inferno. That will be a great way to level up while you are also getting the ordeal done. Yeah, I don't know, I just find it a little bit odd to jump into a operation and not complete it, which is fine. I mean, you can do what you want, of course, when it comes to farming this ordeal, but I just figured, hey, you know what, you already got the queue. You already matchmaked. I mean, you know what? You're probably solo if you're doing this operation anyway. Yeah, regardless, I would definitely just go through the operation after you can get what you can get from the spore mine ordeal, and just level up a bit. Just give yourself a little extra bit of a grind here to make it a little bit more worth it. The ordeal is definitely pretty important, but ultimately, I think we're all in agreement that, getting through these levels and leveling up our characters is probably the most important thing right now. But ultimately, you can, do the grind the way you want. I'm just suggesting maybe just going through Inferno, stomping or shoulder charging the spore mines you see, and then ultimately finding, finding your way to just level up by completing this operation. You can essentially, hit two birds with one stone, and don't throw stones at birds, but you get what I'm saying.